I'm Coach Tarek.
And I'm Vanessa.
We are your movement experts, and we are here to educate health and fitness professionals with the tools to create real change for and within the industry. This is our first episode of the year, and interestingly enough, it is kind of like a wrap-up of 2024. I'm here with my fellow host, Vanessa. How are you doing, Vanessa?
Hello, I'm great. Thank you. It's nice to be back on with you. It's been a little while.
Hasn't it? I know, right at the very beginning. And then we just went this way, and lots of really wonderful guests that we both have interviewed. I'm going to chime in first and ask you what has been the kind of standout person that you've interviewed. It could be a standout person, number one, or a theme, number two, i.e. an insight that you feel has been sort of profound for you and in fact, probably the listeners.
Yeah, okay, that's a great question. I think for me, it's definitely in two parts. I love to interview Paul Taylor, or just talk to Paul Taylor. He's just a fountain of insane knowledge, and the man could talk all day, you know. And what I really loved was all of the information about how they're changing the muscular system to be an endocrine organ. And it was so fascinating. And it really kind of helped shape and change the way that I look at exercise, even though a lot of what he said, I knew. Do you know what I mean? Like I knew in the back of my body that muscles do so much more than what what people say they do. They don't just move your bones, and they don't just get us from A to B. It's so much bigger than that. But I think for me, what was really profound about his conversation, his way of telling it, was that he goes into the cellular impacts of it without making cellular biology boring or complicated. And there aren't very many people who I know who can talk about cellular biology in a fun way. You know what I mean? It is a pretty dry, challenging subject. And I just thought that he absolutely nailed it, and he consistently nails it as well. So that, I think, is probably my favorite episode. Definitely one to go, it's definitely one that I've listened to again since, because there's just so much information there. But I actually think the theme that really stuck out for me was breathwork. And so many professionals and the people who we had on were just talking about the profound impact of lots of different types of breathwork. I mean, we had a couple of breathwork coaches on, but even, Paul Taylor mentioned breathwork. Jessica Maguire was mentioning breathwork. A foot podiatrist, Andy Bryant, was talking about breathwork. It was great to see so many different kind of professions and different aspects of these professions talk about something as profound as breathwork and something as easy to implement into your day-to-day life, which is why I think that was, for me, a really great theme of 2024, and something that I've taken on board quite personally as well. Like, I've invested in nasal strips, and my sleep is incredibly good now since I've done that. I'm really noticing how I breathe throughout the day, just in general. But then just where I can, taking the time to do a few different types of breath works. And every time I do one, it's, you feel better. You never regret a breath work. So that's probably my two. Who was your standout interview, and what was your theme for the year?
Yeah, there's so many. I was sort of contemplating on this, and, you had some wonderful guests that we mutually know as well. Ian O'Dwyer, another one, fountain of knowledge. Yeah, so I had a couple of interesting conversations with Sam Merza from Total Fusion over in Brisbane. Just a great head on his shoulders and very humble. On the second interview that we had with him, we had Dr. Simon Baarbé, who's their head doctor. And what's fascinating about this facility, Vanessa, and those who listen to this podcast, is just, you may have heard Ken Wilber and the integral theory. Really, in the integral theory, it looks at how to integrate different perspectives. And so in our landscape, fitness, health, and wellness, how do we sort of bring together these different domains and value the different perspectives, challenge them a little, but also integrate them? And so meaning in this facility, they've got, fitness, they've got different levels of health and beauty, and then they've got what we call integral or functional medicine, right? We need to be sometimes careful, which Simon said, actually, just be careful. Don't, label me as a functional doctor. So I said, okay, that's fine. But nonetheless, whether they're integrative or functional, it's just fascinating. There's this movement out there that really values preventative health, whether that's driven by medical doctors, allied health professionals, fitness professionals. So really, I believe that's been the theme throughout, I believe, this podcast is the purpose-driven movement, Vanessa, isn't simply about exercise. It's that, but it's much, much more. And it's a testament to the guests that you've had on as well to actually showcase the plethora of different aspects of what we call functional movement or functional nutrition or whatever it could be. It's actually getting all of these experts who are around the world that we've interviewed, and we're going to continue to interview more and more, and showcase the integrative component. So that one was a fascinating conversation. I mean, it was syncing with three of us, which was the first time that I had the podcast with three people. So I'm like, okay. And so that was an interesting one to navigate. And then two other fellows who I know really well and who are good friends of mine are Steve Cotter, and he is so humble. I mean, he's arguably one of the fathers of modern day kettlebells. And him and I got to know each other very well over the years. And he's just so humble. And really his passion is to really get everyone just moving. So he calls it the physical exercise is salvation, or exercise is salvations. And so his whole movement is that everyone needs to access this. It doesn't matter at what level someone's expertise is or what level of experience. So really fascinating philosophical conversation with Steve Cotter. And the other one, Ulrich Larsen. I just think he's just a fountain of wisdom, very humble person, comes from, again, an integrative approach to incorporating what we call physiotherapy into the gym floor. And again, he's been one of the proponents of bridging allied health and fitness, at least in our country, in Australia, and making known that, hey, whilst there is a scope of practice amongst fitness folk, there is still that respect shown to different professionals that we actually can work together synergistically. So they're kind of been the standout ones. As those of you who haven't listened to them yet, please go and jump in.
Exactly. Bringing it back to Sam Merza, I've been to that facility in Brizzy, and it's just
amazing, huh?
It's insane. It's insane. It's one of those places. I think one of the trends this year or this past year and upcoming we see so much is kind of like fitness travel. Or traveling for your health, traveling for your health and wellness. And I think a destination like that, if you're going to be in Brisbane for work and or play, like for sure you'd go in there just for a session, just to go in there. Like I know when I like to go and travel, I love going into gyms in different countries and checking it out and like seeing what there is. And for me, that's a really interesting component of seeing what like the health and fitness culture is like in other places. And you can take a lot of learning from that. So I think sometimes as when we're in our day to day, we forget that there's a huge like fitness landscape out there. And I think like traveling interstate or overseas is such a great excuse to be able to go and like seek out these amazing facilities that people are creating and just being like, that's like a really interesting way to do that, or that was a beautiful experience, or whatever it might be.
That's a great insight. So, I mean, I do it from an educator's perspective. So I'd go in, let's say a Fitness First in Indonesia or wherever, and I deliberately train there because I want to train, but also observe the coaches. And I also am able to kind of just see how they interact with their clients. And sometimes you see the odd horror story, right? And you just go, my goodness. And most of the time that's not the case, but it's just an interesting thing. However, what you're saying is, for those who are trainers out there, coaches, it's so important to either seek out mentors or actually do what you said and just go to different gyms and just be kind of incognito about it and just go, oh, wow, like that's how they do this. And honestly, I do believe that that's the best way to learn, is to almost be a voyeur, of your profession. And in this case, if you're a fitness professional, you're working in a gymnasium and you're a bit stagnant, yes, go and seek out what others are doing. I think that's profound advice. And if you're an educator like you and I are, is to really observe how other coaches are coaching, which we geek out on. And, it's been a pleasure, working with you on these podcasts. You and I go back many, many years, and I've got tremendous respect for how you've evolved and being a real leader, particularly in an industry where oftentimes there'd been bloke heavy, at least the early days, and seeing some tremendous females come to the fore, and you're one of the best in Australia, has been just wonderful. I do actually get a little tingle knowing how much you've evolved and how much impact that that you've made and are making, in this space, Vanessa.
Thank you. I really appreciate that. And I drip the passion from it. Like, I love it. I find it so super fascinating, and I love the learning aspect of what I can bring to a profession. But like this whole podcasting thing has been so amazing. I don't know about you, but like, it's just such a great way to continue to foster these conversations. And like you said, like, you'll go into somewhere and look at someone and how they coach, or even just look at a facility. Sometimes I just like going into a facility and be like, what does it feel like in here? Like, what's the culture like? Would I want to train here? Like, how does the society in this little facility form? I think those are all super important questions. And like you were talking about the whole holistic side of it. But I think it helps keep an open mind, because it can be, like you said, it can be a really cliquey, or it can be a really insular industry. In the movement space, in the strength and conditioning space, there aren't that many females. And while I'm less strength and conditioning now and a little bit more movement based, most of the females in the industry that we know are definitely huge proponents of women's health, which is super important. But I still would love to see more females step up to the plate in terms of, strength coaching and like high intensity fitness, and really talking about those sides of the industry that can still be a little bit male dominated or one-sided. And it's not, because a lot of the male mentors that I've had in my life are incredible, yourself included, and very open and welcoming, and not boys club, which is great. But I think it's also, you have to seek it out as a fitness professional. You've got to find your tribe. And if you're open-minded, you can go into any facility and or anywhere and strike up a conversation with anyone and learn off anyone. And that's the thing, is like there's no point that you get to in your career that you know too much.
So I totally agree. And you and Emma Masters are two great advocates. Exercise to Experience, a tremendous program for those of you who are really seeking to up your game in the group fitness space. And they're two of the experts and leading ones, arguably, in Australia and Asia. So look, I agree with that. We need more proponents of keeping quality as opposed to quantity. Perhaps there's a degrading of the industry, I think, from my observations, of not really valuing education. I'm not saying it just because, we both are educators and have our own education. We profess and promote many other people's educations, like, Dwyer and Steve Cotter. It's really not losing sight of that, I think, Vanessa, is to just make sure that you really value this craft. I never stop learning. I'm into my latest thing called Arnis and Filipino stick fighting. I continue to learn. And so,
fun.
Yeah, and so do you. And I just really urge people, trainers, coaches, to not forget about that. Even if you're an online coach, Vanessa, you've embarked on the online world too. But I see that, you're really leading by example by practicing your training, but also know the value of education.
Yeah, for sure. Speaking of education, what have you taken away from 2024? Like, what have been some of your biggest lessons from your podcast guests?
Good question. Yeah. I need to kind of reflect on that a little. It's looking for that being specific as to what you're wanting to learn, and really seeking out those professionals. And I believe, as you know, that the humble ones don't sort of say, well, I'm the guru, or kettlebells is the main thing, or something like that. It's actually being open, like you said, and actually finding the network, those different perspectives, professionals, and going, well, who do I need to learn from? Which mentor, and what program do they have? And not just sort of attaining to certificates, although, it's a two-edged sword. It's nice to be certified, but really seeking out that mentor, that organization, that person, if you like, and really seeking that. I think that's been not an explicit, but more of an implicit sort of outcome.
Yeah.
No one's really pushed and said, hey, you must do it. Never did I have one guest do that. I'm not sure of your experiences.
Yeah, no, that was a real Aussie thing to say, wasn't it? Sorry for all of our foreign listeners who says, yeah, nah. Aussies say that, by the way. It means I hear you, but no, I don't. That didn't happen for me.
I love it. I love it. You called that out. Yeah, it was funny. There was this comedian recently who went to town with that, and I just couldn't stop laughing. I can't remember who the comedian is, I think there's a common thread there, though, isn't there? The people that we've interviewed, all of them from my end have had no sort of level of ego where they've said, I'm the best at this, although they still hold their footing or their ground to say, what I teach is evidence-based, it's this, it's that. Their philosophies, the real sort of mindset shifts are really important. So like I said earlier, to take an integral approach, the mind, body, emotions, and I'd say spirit as well, because it's all emanating from one's energy. So to sort of always look for the interstitial elements of learning, that's the space between spaces, it's those subtleties in the semantics of everything, right? Of what we say and what we do. Now, let's shift a gear and look forward to 2025 because we do have some big news, and I'll let you start, Vanessa. What's in store for you for 2025?
Oh, thank you. Or like I said, I've enjoyed podcasting so much that I am taking it on my own, which I think I'm a little bit crazy. I am launching a podcast next year about what I do specifically. I call myself a movement therapist, and I'll go into detail about what that is. I think, like what you said, Tarek, everyone has a story, everyone has a subtlety, that in between spaces that you want to fill and that you want to learn how to grow. So for me, I want to be able to push myself, to challenge myself, and stepping out to do my own movement therapy based work in practice as well. So I'll be face to face with most of my clients next year. I'm really losing a lot of that online, which is great because that's what I really love. And yeah, getting into a podcast that is quite, I suppose, specific, which is very cool. So those are big projects next year, and frightening, but super exciting, really exciting. So thank you for asking.
No, absolutely. I think the listeners need to know that we are still collaborating. So, we've not separating paths, that there's division. It's total unity. I made a decision that to allow Vanessa to fly and also to really cross-pollinate. So Vanessa will and I will kind of be on each other's podcasts and checking in and promoting each other because, again, from my perspective, Vanessa, I don't want to kind of hold back on a person's ability to expand, explore, and attract new knowledge or levels of knowledge for listeners. And I believe that we're going to be able to reach more people this way too. So that's what's in store for 2025. What's going to be the name of the podcast?
Oh, it's in contention still. It's in contention. I know. I was not that I'm being secretive, is I'm being internally conflicted.
Okay, well, we'll leave it. We'll leave it in suspense, and that will be announced very soon. And PDM is going to be just as strong. We're going to continue to grow Purpose Driven Movement podcast. We've got some great guests lined up for January already.
What conversations are you looking to have more of in 2025 for PDM?
Yeah, good question. So the incumbent guests that I have are going to still be around the functional or integrative medicine space, because I feel that there's a lot of good stuff out there that kind of to sort of to debunk even. So to make sure that there's good consensus, good science out there, and just to show that it's not just about kind of medical versus preventative, that there is a line drawn in the sand when obviously an emergency case is required. But oftentimes, what's that transition and how do allied health professionals, fitness professionals, etc., play a big part, in that whole integrative approach we discussed earlier. So it'll draw people from the allied health space, looking at sort of different levels of technology apps that help augment a coach's journey, a trainer's journey. So there'll be plenty of exciting variation or variability in the podcast and different perspectives again. So that's what's going to be installed for January and beyond. Incredible.
All right. Quick fire. Last question. The episode anyone should go back to and listen.
From my perspective, I've got to figure the name now. But if you look at Sam Merza and Simon Baarbé, there's so many names now. I'm going blank. But that episode would be one to go back to for me. What about you?
I would say the fitness controversy one with Ian O'Dwyer.
Yeah, he is fun. Yeah, he's a great guy. I mean, that any of those episodes, I think go back to all of them. Go back to all of them.
Yeah.
If you haven't listened to them, there's plenty of good.
So much learning.
We'll continue to do the great work, Vanessa. And those of you who've, been supporters and listeners, keep spreading the word because, this medium is a powerful way to disseminate knowledge through different perspectives. So I'll continue to encourage each of you to kindly share. I know there's been over 55 countries, people from 55 different countries have actually downloaded Purpose-Driven Movement. So it's really quite, incredible, and we'll continue to reach more and more and farther and farther.
Amazing. Happy 2025.
Likewise. If you enjoyed this episode, could you do me a quick favor? If you're listening on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, could you please add your 5-star rating? Doing this really does support the show and gets our episodes in front of listeners just like yourself. Thanks for your support. I greatly appreciate it.